Hello, my name is Jennifer Passavant. I am an intuitive spiritual life coach, an energy healing practitioner, and a health and wellness coach. And I'm here with my good friend, Chris, also known as Auticus. Would you like to introduce yourself, Chris?
Yes. Hello. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I am Auticus. They call me the Desert Viking. I run a different YouTube channel on esotericism and Freemasonry, and I'm a Knight Templar. So that's basically it.
And I've got all of his links in the description if you're interested in checking out his YouTube channel, which I strongly encourage you to do. And so when the eclipse was approaching, or excuse me, when the equinox was approaching and we were having the eclipse, he and I noticed that we were both kind of thinking of this same theme because there had been a very widely known circumstance in the world that was bringing up a lot of conversation about unity and division. And so at the forefront of our minds came to be unity. And boy, the symbol of the equinox couldn't be more perfect when it comes to unity consciousness. And so he and I got to talking kind of behind the scenes, and it turns out we were both thinking of similar symbolism, and we were thinking of making similar posts. And I was supposed to be doing a live earlier today with Bonnie, which we did about 20 minutes worth, and then it fell through. So I thought, I don't want to waste this opportunity. So I got a hold of Chris, and we thought we'd get together and talk about this because I think it's something that really needs to be discussed right now. So what do you want to add to that, if anything?
No, I mean, that's perfect. Yeah, the equinox is, we look at the two extremes, the black and the white, the checkered tiled floor. Black and white are the two extremes of, we can call them color. Someone can pedantically say they're not really color, but whatever, black and white, right? And the equinox is in the middle, which is where we should be striving to be, not hanging on one extreme or the other, because we are both of those things, and we need to use both of those energies to grow, and not just rely on one. And the equinox is a natural point in the cosmos where we are balanced. So on that one day where the night and the day are perfectly balanced.
Yeah. And I add to that. And if anyone is interested in looking at the massive amounts of symbolism that I crammed into the video's thumbnail, you'll notice that I put the symbol of Libra, which is the balanced scales, with the moon on one side and the sun as a solar eclipse on the other side, just because the solar eclipse, I think, also had a lot to do with everything that was happening, endings and new beginnings. Things have to change. Things can't remain the same. There has to be change made. And that's kind of what the eclipse in Virgo was all about, and eclipses in general. But I put the black and white pillar of Kabbalah. I put the chakras, because there's not just, left and right, masculine, feminine in terms of duality. There's also the duality of the upper and the lower, because the upper is the masculine and the lower is the feminine. Whether you're looking at chakras or whether you're looking at the upper pointing triangle of the flame of fire, or the lower pointing triangle of water, of the womb, of the feminine, it's all still polarities, but everything that balances the left and the right and the upper and the lower. So I also put the Templar cross, because I think that's a really good symbol for all of those polarities coming together in the middle, in the heart. And that's really where unity consciousness is, I think.
That is, in fact, one of the interpretations of the Templar cross. The equal arm cross has been around for a very long time and represents both of that material and spiritual coming together. And we are both.
Yeah. And, what I thought was really cool about the equinox was it wasn't just you and I who were having these conversations about unity consciousness, and this being an opportunity to really look at where you're operating and how do you want to continue to operate. It was a very big topic, and I think it still is, but it was really very much right a few days before and a few days after the equinox. And so for me, just to kind of dive a little more into it for the audience, for me, unity consciousness and Christ consciousness is one and the same. And it's not only the balance of opposites and the meeting of opposites into sort of a 0-point field, but it's also the acknowledgement that everything is you and you are everything. So everything that you do and every way in which you perceive and every way in which you treat others, you are also doing to yourself, but not only to yourself, but also to God and source, because God and source is also everything. And so unity consciousness is really recognizing that what you do to another, you are also doing to yourself and God. And so to be really mindful of that. And is it really worth still operating from that uh, attachment and define polarity? Because I think that's a lot of what it is people are attached to a polarity and they identify with that polarity, meaning that tribe that they belong to, that becomes a part of who they are. I'm a such and so. And when you then oppose that, if you have a perspective that differs from that, the person then takes it personally. Like that's like a personal attack now because they identify with it.
Mhm.
And then that gets to be the finger pointing. But as soon as you start pointing your finger outside of yourself, then you are no longer taking any kind of responsibility or accountability for how you are choosing to respond. Are you making it worse by pointing fingers and making accusations and buying into the indoctrination and propaganda? Or are you letting someone else be and think differently from you?
Yep. And so I do some lectures, and one of the lectures I give on unity, and I don't have it in here with me, unfortunately, but I have a prism. It's a globe, right? So imagine a globe of glass, and in my hand, it's got multiple facets. Now we know a prism, when we shine light onto it, will spread out a bunch of colors on the floor. That's why we use them, right? But you can also use that as a demonstration of perspective. So what I'll do in that lecture is, if I shine a light onto that globe and on the floor are all these colors, I'll ask a person, now which color is the correct color? And everyone looks at me like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, which color is the correct color? I'm like, I bet it's violet because it's on your foot. And therefore, because your foot is on violet and that's where you are, you would identify with that color, and all the other colors are wrong. And everyone looks at me and goes, well, that's ridiculous. I'm like, it is ridiculous because you can see that I'm shining a light onto a prism and you know how it works. But all of those colors are really coming from that one source of light. Well, that is the world. That is us. It's the same thing. It's just we can't see the hand holding the light into the prism. We just live in the world that we live in. But it's the same concept. We have to be able to understand that our perspective is not the only perspective. And many times I'm wrong, or many times, like, I'll be talking to you, for example, and you'll say something that I never considered before. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a beautiful thing. And you have to be open-minded enough to go, you have to be able to actually shift your perspective to the other person's perspective and see things, to at least understand where they're coming from and understand we're all going up different paths up the same mountain. So I love that. Unity that's one of our goals.
I absolutely love that demonstration. I think that's perfect. And when you were talking about, allowing for people to be different and, communicating to try to understand where they're coming from, I think that's where a lot of people struggle. I think a
Mhm.
lot of people are very self-centered and narcissistic. And I don't mean that as an insult. I mean that as an objective observation that people really struggle to not make everything all about themselves. Because really the biggest thing about not allowing differences is because covertly, like this isn't something that they do consciously necessarily, is they don't like that someone isn't exactly like them. Now, they're okay with, diversity in a superficial way, skin color, sexual orientation, gender identity, of blah, 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 blah. But as soon as someone thinks differently or has a different perspective, that's a whole different ballgame. That's not diversity.
Now you're an other. You become the other.
Yes.
And
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 that,
part
oh, go
part of
ahead.
that part of that is also the herd animal mentality that we're supposed to be escaping from. One of the source of esoteric tradition is that the human race is supposed to eventually become the lords of freedom. And it's just one stream of esoteric thought. I'm not saying it's true or not because I don't know. But as the lords of freedom, we're supposed to break away from that herd mentality. But from a psychological perspective, we don't like to be isolated. We don't like to be ostracized. We don't like to be on our own. So we do whatever we have to do to maintain popularity and status so that we have a tribe. And so a lot of that behavior also comes from that. It's that fear of, well, if I don't think exactly like you or pretend to, you won't like me and you won't want to talk to me and I'll be by myself. So
Mhm.
there's that fear as well that has to be overcome, which is deadly difficult.
That is difficult. And you're right. A lot of it is that tribalism, which is why I use the word, identifying with a particular tribe, because I want to highlight that's exactly what it is. And to kind of go slightly down the woo trail like you did, but in a different way. Um, if you study any kind of theosophy or anthroposophy or even Edgar Cayce, his teachings were that, now these aren't the only two epochs that existed, but these are the more recent two. There was Lemuria, when we finally kind of came from being non-physical into physical, but we were still very much a collective consciousness. We did not have a sense of individuality at all. And there was, telepathic communication. For a while, we didn't even reproduce using a male and a female. We reproduced by kind of like cells reproduce by kind of splitting ourselves off onto a new being. We didn't require the other. And then the pendulum, in terms of what we were supposed to experience or what we agreed to experience, was meant to swing in the other direction, which became the Atlantean epoch. And to just make it clear for people, Lemuria and Atlantis are not necessarily places. Like, it's not like, yeah, over there was Lemuria and over there was Atlantis. They were time periods that, yes, they were more prominent in certain locations on the planet, but they ultimately overlapped a little bit. So I just want to clarify, when I'm referring to Lemuria and Atlantis, I'm referring to the epoch of time, not a place on the planet. So, but Atlantis became very individualized and very I am, and very tribalistic. So bloodlines were very important. You would marry within your tribe, you would marry within your bloodline. And it was about survival, and it was about like identity. And this tribe is all about this thing, and that tribe is all about that thing. And there was a lot of separation in that regard. And as you said, what we're now meant to do in this post-Atlantean epoch is to find a balance. And here we go again, back to the balance, finding a balance between unity and individuality. And that's where the I am aspect comes from, because it's acknowledging that we are both the all and the individual.
And understanding what happened to the Atlanteans ultimately, because of how far they went, they blew themselves up.
Yeah, we're very close to experiencing not only the we're being given an opportunity now to relive and hopefully do better with regard to the Atlantean karma, but also Lemurian karma, where it's both of them are playing out right now. Because the Lemurian karma was becoming more animalistic and reverting back to very more like primal ways of being. And so there were some Lemurians that involuted into what would be considered to be like ape-like beings. So yeah, interesting.
Yes. Yeah.
We could go into, from here we could get into transhumanism and all kinds of weird stuff, but to back to the unity consciousness aspect of it and the Christ consciousness aspect of it. For me, what I'm seeing is people really kind of needing to, I actually think it has a lot to do with, everyone's real struggle to be able to get to the point of doing this, is being able to see your own wounds and your own biases and your own challenges from an objective and neutral way, so that you can control when you're operating from them. And I think most people have not done that deep dive. And so they're not able to recognize when they're operating from a bias, when they're triggered, when they're personalizing something, when they're taking something personally. And so people like to have their biases confirmed, and they get confirmed in their tribe, and they can get confirmed in echo chambers, and they get confirmed in the highly manipulated social media and mainstream media, and where very emotionally charged language is used, and we're shown the extremes that are not the norm, but we then assume that the extreme, the other side is everyone of that side is that extreme that I just, that we just saw on social media or the news, when it's really, most people are much more moderate and centrist than that, but they don't want us to perceive others in that way. We have to make the other the enemy, and we have to fear them, and we have to hate them. That's kind of the general gist. But I think you fall prey to that more easily when you haven't done your inner work. Would you agree with that?
It's dehumanizing. You dehumanize the other so that they're not looking at human beings anymore. They're looking at demons that should be snuffed out, and that's what we see from both sides today.
Yep.
Um, yes, inner work's important. A lot of so there's unfortunately, like with everything, it's not a simple solution. It's very complex, and it's fed by many streams of inputs. For one, we live in a world, at least in the West, at least in America, which you and I can understand understand. We live in a survival mode almost, where you have all you can do is work, and so being able to do things like self reflection and other things are, to some people think that's a luxury because they're exhausted, and then you're bombarded with social media, which you can turn yourself off of, but it's addicting and it's designed to do what it's doing. And
Mhm.
then there is the lack of, they intentionally removed actual education from our system 100 years ago.
Mhm.
In Freemasonry, we talk about the 7 liberal arts and how important they are. And we're not talking about liberal arts like what people think of what that is today. The 7 liberal arts are vital, and they're based on the first 3, which are called the trivium. And the trivium is rhetoric, grammar, and logic. And those 3 elements are how you are able to understand what you're reading, understand how to speak, how to do what you and I are doing right now, in a way to talk about our opinions and our thoughts in a way that's not aggressive, I guess, or forcing, like, this is how it is. And also logic, being able to discern what is right and wrong by being able to view things in multiple perspectives. And those were all removed out of our curriculums. Those things used to be taught to children, and now they got taught at the college level. And I've got 2 degrees, and I can tell you right now, the logic they teach in college today, and even 20 years ago, is nothing compared to what it was before. And those are the things that need to be introduced back. There's multiple streams that are causing what we see today, and I think it's
Mhm.
intentional.
I completely agree. I think the intentionality behind it is to narrow everyone's perspectives to very specific perspectives, and then take away the ability for people to, a, allow for differences, but b, communicate differences. Um, and it's I absolutely see it as being intentional. And for me, and I don't know that I can explain very clearly how I was able to move out of it, but I think just through, honest to God, just through doing my own shadow work and the work I was doing on myself, I was able to, in being able to see myself and what my wounds were from a more objective, like, matter of fact, yep, that's a trigger, that's a wound, allowed me to see everything else that way. And thank God for it, because then I was kind of able to wake up out of the stupor of having attached myself and identifying with a side. And I was able to really see things more objectively and go, oh, that is not at all what I thought it was. I drank the Kool-Aid per se,
Yeah.
and I'm really grateful for that experience. I'm really grateful for getting to that point. And I think the only way we can, at least the only way I can think of to move forward, is for me, and because I can only speak for myself, is to be an example of what unity consciousness is. And, you know, I think, like I was saying earlier, people tend to personalize things and make things about themselves. So they don't listen to understand. They listen to then respond to give their perspective and what they think and what their truth and blah, 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 because they're making it about me, 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 I. And for me, it's more about, just tell me about you. Who gives a, it's what I think and what I believe is not important. Obviously, you want to be heard, so I'm going to let you share, and I'm going to ask you questions. And if you happen to ask about me, you ask about me. If you don't, you don't. But I don't have to make it about me. And what you say doesn't have to matter. It doesn't matter to me.
Mhm.
And I think for a lot of people, they can't do that. They can't engage in such a way where they can allow differences.
Yeah, they don't. A lot of them just don't care.
Mhm.
I think, yeah, doing that self reflection, that shadow work, you have to go into some dark places.
Mhm.
And when you go into those dark places, there's different, you can be, they say if you gaze into the abyss long enough, you become the monster. So you have to be careful with that. But on the other side, it does let you look at multiple perspectives, because to do shadow work means you have to look at unpleasant things about yourself
Yes.
and acknowledge those unpleasant things about yourself. And I think by doing that, that helps having these conversations, because now you're cognizant of the fact that, you know, you have flaws. We all have flaws. We're all humans. That's part of being human. But to
Hmm.
be able to share those, and in a way where I actually care about what you're saying and trying to learn from your perspective as well, that
Hmm.
it's a two-way street. So yeah,
Yeah.
I like, definitely like that how you brought that in there.
Yeah. Do you feel like there are any do you feel like there are any other ways that unity consciousness can be, how shall I say this? I don't want to say spread. I don't like that word, but um that others can be guided to be open to operating from, I think is a better way to say unity consciousness.
So when I hear unity consciousness, what I am hearing in my head is the middle pillar.
Hmm.
I think it's just the same. It's the same concept spoken a little bit differently, because I'm a Kabbalist. So I everything I do is always framed in that mind, or not always, but often. As you know,
Hmm.
we communicate, and I bring that up a lot.
Hmm.
Um, it's really difficult to get people away from the extremes
Hmm.
for the reasons we discussed. For one, it's easy. If things are binary, it's just easy because I don't have to think. I have to be in the square that I think aligns best with me. So politically, religiously, whatever, I don't ever. I'm always usually right in the middle. Every time I take those stupid tests, I might be a point one way or the other, but it's mostly middle. And the reason that is because there are things I agree with on this side, and there are things I agree with on the other side, and there are things I disagree with on both sides, and there are things I strongly disagree with on both sides. So for me, I make that choice. I will not back this side because there are things I disagree. I don't back sides. I back ideas. I back philosophies.
Hmm.
People want sides.
Hmm.
How do you change that? Well, the world is programmed to make you believe that that's the world, that the world is sides, like the Matrix.
Hmm.
And you take that red pill. I know people are going to laugh, but you take the red pill and you start to see, well, it's not just these two sides. There's the world is a multifaceted prism, and you have to be able to view those. And the Templars in legend, one of the things they did was during the Crusades, they got along with everyone. They
Hmm.
got along with the Muslims. They got along with the Sufis, the esoteric Muslims. They got along with the Jews. And then they were on the outside a Catholic organization. And yes, that's all by legend. I know, trust me, bro. Right? There's stuff that is the scholarly accepted answer of the Templars, and then there's the legends. And the orders I'm in, we talk about the legends a lot. So, but anyhow, they got along with all of those because they realized that it was that God has different faces for different aspects of humanity, and that people need those different faces because we're not all this, and we don't all come from this place, and that all of those faces are still God.
Hmm.
All of those perspectives are still humanity. So picking a side is ultimately fruitless. There's nothing. You get nothing out of that. You live your life and die. And I think you come back then and you have to relive the lesson over and over again until you figure that out. And there's an important tarot card I like to bring up, the Lover's card. And
Okay.
the Lover's card, on the name of it is misleading. The Lover's card is actually about discernment, discrimination or discernment, and not discrimination in the way that people think about today in the political climate.
Hmm.
Being able to discriminate or use logic to determine what's right or not.
Hmm.
And in that card, there are three figures in a triangle. There's a man, a woman, and an angel. And the man represents our consciousness, and the woman represents our subconsciousness, and the angel represents our true self. And the Hebrew letter for that is associated with the tarot is Zion, which is the sword. And it's called the sword because you have to discern between right or wrong, or what is the correct answer. You have to cut that. And the man is looking at the woman, and the woman's looking at the man in that card. And that's showing you in some versions of the card. In the other versions of the card, the man is looking at the woman, the woman's looking up at the angel. And
Mm.
that's where we're supposed to get to. The subconscious is not supposed to look at the conscious.
Right.
because if the subconscious is looking at the conscious is the ego. So if
Mhm.
your subconscious is driven by the ego, you have not yet done the work. And therefore you're able to easily be led around by the nose and go, well, you have to be in this tribe or this tribe. If you
Yes.
can listen to that small voice in your subconscious, and the conscious looks at the subconscious and she's looking at the angel, that's where your true self can communicate. And that's where I think you can elevate to see those things a little clearer. But to your root question, how do you get the world to do that? I
Not
don't
even
know.
how do you get them to do it, but what would be your approach, I guess, in terms of introducing people? I mean, obviously you've already got your videos, but if you're having, say, a one-on-one conversation with a friend or a coworker or a family member or someone you meet in the grocery store, and they are clearly operating from a bias, what do you feel is your or what do you think would be your default approach to kind of demonstrate for them and be an example of unity consciousness in order for them to realize that you're not going to play in that same game?
I mean, my approach is I don't think you can teach someone unless they're ready.
Mhm.
Most people are not ready. So if someone, and a lot of most of the people in my life are like this, they're very biased one way or the other. I don't approach them about it because I know that it's not going to result in anything. If I approach them, they're going to see me as the other,
Mhm.
and they're going to attack me as the other. Doesn't matter what political party they belong to. I'm called bad names by both sides pretty much daily.
Mhm.
And so what you can do is live by your example. That's it. You live by your example. You don't discriminate. You champion what you feel is right, and you gather unto yourself an egregore of people who help. And I don't want to say echo chamber because I have a lot of people in my personal circles that all disagree with a lot of things I say, and we argue back. It's not a mean spirited argument at all. Uh, but we can disagree with each other. That's the whole point. It's constructed like that intentionally because that's how we can grow. And you may not agree with everything I do, and that's fine. But you have to be at that elevated. You have to be at that point. So you gather under yourself those people, and that way the light doesn't go out.
Mhm.
And it gets dark, and it's been dark many times in human history, and it will continue to be. But
Yeah.
all you can do is you hold the light out, and you live by an example. That's it.
So for me, it's the same thing where, you know, I don't approach anybody with it, but people approach me.
Mhm.
And when I then try to be, like you were saying, the example by, on the one hand, allowing them to share and just say, "Oh, that I can understand that that's how you feel. Thank you for sharing that." And that makes them feel heard. That makes them feel validated. And then
Yep.
I can say, that's really interesting. I tend to be very, very neutral on things, and I think very independently, and so I can see that neither side, and I kind of just plant this seed where I say, I don't really see one side as being wholly evil and one side as wholly good. I tend to see that both sides have their positive aspects and their negative aspects, and that neither are wholly innocent and neither side is wholly evil. And so I can understand then why you see it this way, because that's not the information that you've been um, that's not the information that you have been um, given. And
Mhm.
but that's not how I see it. And so I try to just kind of plant the seed of, maybe it's not what you think.
Mhm.
Maybe it's a little more nuanced, because you were talking about it's either black or it's white, and there isn't an allowance for nuance. And I try to plant the seed of, maybe there's some nuance there. Maybe you're super biased, and maybe you could consider not looking at things from a more open perspective, because once you pigeonhole yourself into a bias, you can call yourself open-minded until you're blue in the face, but you are not open-minded.
Right. And there are two hermetic axioms that follow that line of thought. And I love that. Yes, if someone were to come to me and ask me, that's
Mhm.
different because they're actually, if someone comes up to you and asks, that means they're open to at least having the conversation.
Yes, yeah.
I don't bring the conversation to them is
Mhm.
really more what I should have said. So You
Yeah, you
explained
can't make someone wake up.
Yeah, you explained
Yeah.
it beautifully. The two hermetic axioms that I try to always keep in mind, bearing in mind that I'm a human and I make mistakes, and any one of us can get into that. Well, no, what I think is right. Number one is all truths are but half truths, meaning everything you think dead set that you're right on, you're probably not fully right on. And I found that out many, many times in my life. I'd be so dead sure something was the way it is, and found out, nope, not that way.
Mhm.
So you always got to keep that in mind. And the second one is the law of polarity. It's one of the seven laws in the Kabbalion. And the law of polarity basically is like temperature. There's no real such thing as hot a temperature. There's just varying degrees of hot or cold, right? Black and white, and there's gradients, exactly like what you said. So those are all hermetic philosophies to follow, and so those are, to me, always usually the paths of wisdom.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I agree. And I often say now, I no longer participate in tribalism because it's not for our time, and it doesn't do anybody any good, and it only sows division. And anytime you point the finger at somebody else as being the problem, you are participating in that division. You are a part of the problem. So anytime you point the finger as somebody else being the problem, you are in fact the problem.
Mhm.
Um and so with regard to the nuance and that's where I think non-attachment really is a benefit. When you don't attach to a side, you don't identify it with it, your mind then is open. And so
Mhm.
you can be okay with being wrong. And
Mhm.
when you're presented with new information, you can change your mind.
Mhm.
But you can't do that if you are so attached to a side that you will only allow for confirmation bias.
Yep.
Um, and I think that sort of like a Zen Buddhist sort of approach in terms of it's not only Zen Buddhist, but I think most people think of it as being a Zen Buddhist approach in terms of letting go of attachments. And that includes attachments, not just, material attachments, but attachments to ideas, attachments to beliefs, attachments to perceptions.
Mhm. Yeah. Another word for that is dogma.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
any of the things I write about dogma all the time. Like, you can't, in religion or politics or anything, that dogma is creating rules. It's creating a boundary. And so you're not allowed to think freely because it violates the rules.
Hmm.
And that should be an immediate, like, you should be staunchly opposed to that. You should be staunchly opposed to anything that says you must think this way.
Yes. And what I extra love, at least what just came to mind to kind of throw Christ into this, because we are talking about unity consciousness, which is also called Christ consciousness, um, is that who was the one person that you can think of in terms of, throwing dogma into a tailspin
Mhm.
is Christ, the Jesus, the man who held the Christ impulse in him. He came and went like, yeah, all that you were told, nope. Get I have two commandments, not 10, two. Here's the two, and I'm going to flip the tables over because in the temple, because we do not pay for animal sacrifice. That is not what we do. That is disgusting. That's not how God works. Forget this. You want to talk going against dogma?
Oh, yeah, that's why they wanted him dead.
Yes, absolutely. So, kind of literally be Christ. you
Yeah.
know, what would Jesus do? Kind of quite literally, and that includes bucking against dogma.
Mhm. Yep.
Be Buddha, be all of those beings that carried that impulse.
Yep. And that's definitely, yeah. Anyone watching or thinking, like, obviously, if anyone watching this has those thoughts where they want to be, they don't want to be programmed.
Mhm.
Anytime you think you feel like it's your side tugging you to a thought, it may not be wrong. There's not, just because, there's things that the sides think about that are maybe correct, but you have to look at where they're coming from and what is the ultimate goal of going down that road. And is that a good road? Is that going to unify, going to build your community, or is that going to destroy your community?
Mhm. Yeah, and I think a lot of what's done and a lot of what's said is disguised, or I should say cloaked. I think that's a better way to say it.
Sure.
A lot of what is said and done is cloaked under the guise of promoting unity when it in fact promotes the exact opposite. But
It's,
they've got to try to get you behind that idea. So if they can sell you on the idea that it's going to promote unity or, democracy or whatever, when it promotes the exact opposite, but they've got to get you behind that. So they've got to try to sell it to you. And so it's like if they're trying hard to sell that to you by either making you feel really good about something, or they're trying to sell you something about the other side by making you feel afraid or angry, that's emotional manipulation. So you can really kind of tell, it gives you an indication of what the intention is behind the narrative or the agenda or whatever, based on the language that's used around it.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. And being able to recognize it is important.
Yeah.
And then not being afraid to go against it. That's you have to be able to step outside, because there's going to be some backlash.
Yep.
You have to have some steel in your spine.
Yeah, you have to be okay with not being in a tribe. That's what we're supposed to be doing anyway, is, no longer attaching to a tribe. For all those spiritual people, they're like, I'm RH negative and I'm an Atlantean whatever, and I was an Arcturian star seed, and those are all still tribes. That's all still a form of tribalism. I'm of Christ's bloodline. I'm an Anunnaki, whatever it is, that's still all an attachment to a tribe. Whether it's real or not doesn't matter. It's still an attachment to a tribe, and we're supposed to be getting rid of that. So, and it's also ego stroking. It's also a way to
There's a lot of
be
that. Yeah.
superior than others by, I'm special. Honey, we're all special.
We're all shards of God. We're all
Yes.
parts of God, here to experience the material plane as his experience. All of us are the same.
Yes. We are all the same. We are all unique, and we are all special. No one is more unique or more special than anyone else.
We have unique perspectives. That's
Yes.
the whole point.
Yes.
But we do not outrank each other. The rich and the poor are still brothers. And that's what I love about being in a lodge. We don't care where you come from. You can be a king. And when you step foot in the lodge, you're just a brother.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how I try to operate in real life, like brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
That's it. I don't care what star seed you come from. That's cool. If you do, that's great. I am not the arbiter of truth and final knowledge. I think that's great. If you are, I have something I could learn from you. But at the end, we're all on the level. We're all just different star seeds.
Yes.
Experiencing the world.
Yes, exactly. I don't know if you want to go down other roads, because we could keep going if you'd like, and we can discuss other fascinating things. Or I feel like we've kind of covered unity consciousness pretty thoroughly. Unless you have anything else you'd like to add, what would you like to do?
It's your show.
You tell me what
you want to talk about. I like to talk about all kinds of philosophical things. So
I know. Well, okay, let's talk about, only because I thought it was awesome. I thought it was such a great post, which is why I tagged a couple friends underneath it. But you made a post about, and this was genius, and this still goes into the polarity and the black and the white, and but the imbalances of the polarities. And because there's a balanced polarity and an imbalanced polarity, like there's the balanced feminine and the balanced masculine, and there's the imbalanced feminine and the imbalanced feminine. Did I say that right? You know what I mean.
We know what you mean.
Okay, good. But you brought up Ahriman and Lucifer, which of course is very anthroposophical. So you really spoke to me, but you cranked it up a notch by also noting that you are under the impression, and boy, as soon as you said it, my brain went, oh my God, duh, that they are represented biblically as the beast with 10 horns. And then can you describe them for me again, please?
The Book of Revelations. It's the two-headed beast. It's Behemoth, and I can't remember the name of the other one, but the 10-headed beast is Lucifer, and the two-headed beast is Ahriman. And so what it was, And just to give everyone where my references are, because one of my bugbears is people who don't give references. I didn't invent this. Obviously, it's in the Book of Revelations. I didn't invent this, but the idea came from a book called the Mark of the Beast,
Mm.
and it's written. It's about the Spear of Destiny. So the first book is the Spear of
Mm.
Destiny. The second book is the Mark of the Beast, which is a follow up, and it's by a brother whose name I'm now not going to remember. He's passed since. He goes and he writes books about Deuce Rex. Um,
Oh, yes.
Tim
Yes.
Wallace Murphy. Tim Wallace Murphy.
Yes. Oh
So
my
that's
God. I know who you're talking about. Okay.
yeah. So that's where this comes from, just so everyone's aware.
Wow.
And
Okay.
in that book, because
Oh, shoot. You froze. Unless I froze. There you
sorry,
go.
my internet
Either you
dropped.
froze or I froze. One of us froze.
We both froze.
Okay.
All right. Um, so we know that the man with the funny mustache was big into the occult. Uh,
Mm.
and
Mm-hmm.
according to this book, anyhow, he when he was still painting and very poor, he first saw the Spear of Destiny in the museum, and he became fixated with it, and he ended up, getting it. And those who have had who have had it have shaped the world in either super good or super bad ways. Well, anyhow, he was allegedly the dragon, the big dragon, and the dragon was defeated, and from out and the dragon gets cast in the abyss, and from out of the abyss will come the other creature, right? And that's where they become the two. That's
Okay.
where they become the two polarities. So instead of the one big enemy, now you have the two
Yes.
the two beasts.
Oh, that's fascinating. And so, and also for background for people watching, so people understand a lot of people conflate. So, actually, I have to back up even further than that. So, Ahriman essentially is the Zoroastrian version of Christian and Jewish and Muslim Satan character. So it's the Zoroastrian
The
ver-
devil.
yes, of that version of the devil where because Lucifer and Satan or Lucifer and Ahriman are kind of two sides of the same, they're like polar opposites of the same coin of imbalance.
They're the black and
Um,
white pillars.
yes, exactly. And or I would say the imbalances of the black and white pillars, only because I think there is balanced masculine and balanced feminine. Or I guess I think of it as like when you know how when you've got your chakras, and you can either have your chakra balanced, but it can be an upper chakra with it, which is masculine, and a lower chakra, which is feminine, or it can be an imbalance. So you're, do you see? That's kind of where I'm going with this.
Templar cross, two pillars,
Yes.
tree of life, tree of
Yeah.
death.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So just so yeah. Um, but for the viewers, Ahriman is basically Satan, and so you could look at Ahriman as being the imbalance of your lower self or your lower chakras or the left side, and Lucifer would be the imbalance of the upper self, the upper chakras, and the right side, the masculine side. And so that's where Lucifer is false light, and Satan or Ahriman is just darkness. Um,
Crystallized matter.
Yes, crystallized matter. Dante's Inferno does a great job of describing the Satan Ahriman character. And actually, this is so bizarre. Did you ever go see the last Aquaman movie?
No.
Okay, it wasn't great, but it
That's
was
what I
also
didn't.
awesome at the same time. Like,
Okay.
and the only reason it was awesome is because of the spiritual symbolism. It was like you kind of have to see it just for that,
Mm,
because they were equating Aquaman to Jesus or the Christ impulse with the gold, the gold scales, but they were also playing that song that I absolutely love, Spirit in the Sky.
okay.
When you first see him, and I'm like, okay, they're equating him to Jesus. I'm picking up what they're putting down. But the bad guy that they had to fight was this machine, this AI machine guy that was solid, that was frozen in ice
Hmm.
and surrounded by rock. And if
Mhm.
you've ever read Dante's Inferno, and that's kind of like the best, except for the machine part, that's like the best way to describe the solidity, the density, the mechanics, the mechanical aspect, the synthetic aspect, the crystallization aspect of Satan and Armon. And I went, oh my God, this is so perfect. It was just perfect. Anyway,
Sadly, it was in a bad movie, but
yeah, it was.
I
Yeah.
don't need to watch it now because you've explained
Well,
how
I guess
awesome
that's true. Yeah, I've ruined it
Thank
for
you.
you.
No, you didn't ruin it. You saved me an hour and a half, but thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. But I feel like the Lucifer and Armon aspect was really great in terms of showing how the polarities have those imbalances and how to recognize them, because you've got one that is very um physicalized and very materialistic, very, so if we were to talk about that in terms of how a person would operate, it would be very sexually oriented, for strictly for pleasure, very gluttonous in terms of food, very power hungry, very financially and power and control
Greedy.
oriented, yeah, greedy. Whereas the Luciferic would be very escapism. I want to meditate all the time. I want to take ayahuasca and be in these other states of consciousness all the time.
I don't
I'm
wanna
only,
work. I wanna be lazy, super lazy,
yes,
and not do anything productive.
yes, not do anything. I don't even want to be incarnated. Like, I don't even want to exist in a physical body. I'm anti being in a body, and I just want to get the heck out of Dodge. I want to leave Earth.
Yep.
And also scientific and religious dogmatism. That's also Lucifer. And you can see how both of those are playing out right now,
Mhm. Mhm.
blatantly.
Mhm. Yep. Yep, and, I think that's been going on. So the church had a big role of that 2,000 years ago when they did what they did. The, Age of Enlightenment in the 1500s helped accelerate that, in the 1500s, so at 500 years, and now we're reaching it's almost like you're reaching a crescendo where you're starting to see almost a reversal, and I think that's because of the overindulgences and the overhedonism of our culture has left so many people hollow and miserable that some of them are starting to question that, and they don't know where to go to, but you're starting to see more people go back to church now, which is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
You're starting to see people like go back to come to the lodge. Maybe Freemasonry has something for me. I don't know, right? They're asking that.
Hmm.
Um, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting in the next 20, 30 years to see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I think as we move forward, I think we're going to see, as has been predicted by many, um, a bifurcation of people gravitating more towards spirituality and getting closer to God's source spirit, and um a greater degree of unity consciousness, but also a move towards, sorry, I just got an eyelash in my eye. And then those who are moving more towards things like transhumanism and wanting to synthesize everything divine and organic, and wanting and power and control and hedonism, or also escapism, like just play these video games, just go into virtual reality, just in the spiritual community, we're going to have all these ayahuasca and DMT retreats, just come and it's a, either you're escaping into machinery or you're escaping into spiritualism. But I think we're going to see a lot of escapism as well as mechanization and, I don't know how else to put it, but like dehumanization and like anti-life stuff. And I think we're going to see a greater split. But I think, at least as I understand it, where you put your focus is going to determine the timeline that you ultimately experience, because the two worlds will then ultimately split. The two timelines will split off. So if you keep your focus on fear, anger, hatred, not doing your inner work, not holding yourself accountable and responsible for how you respond in your own actions, pointing your fingers at the other side, etc., you will then have that experience of that, how shall I say, less positive timeline. But if you keep your focus on trying to connect to the God, with the Christ within you, in your own heart, because that is where Christ is found. God is not found outside of you. God is found inside of you, but it's also, you can see it in everyone else. So if that's where you put your focus, and if church gets you there, so much the better. If being out in nature gets you there, I don't, great. Like,
nature's like church.
that's, nature is absolutely my church. You know, I think that's, then you have the opportunity to experience the more unity consciousness, as well as individualized, the I am, I guess you could say, I am that I am, experience of, you know, being unified and allowing for other people to be an individual.
Yep. And let's not forget, I know, and again, it's the woo woo, and
I
it's
love the woo. That's
it's
my
a
favorite.
it's a little bit of trust me, bro. But the Atlanteans blew themselves up in the same way. They were divided so severely, and they ended up nuking themselves basically.
Yes.
And the answer doesn't lie in the extremes. And the spiritual escapism sounds fun, because I'm obviously I'm spiritual, right?
Hmm.
But I don't, getting on mind altering drugs, you have to be very careful with that, because we're trying to attain that state without drugs.
Hmm.
And when you use drugs as a shortcut, you're not ready for what you're going to experience in a lot of cases. And you end up handicapping, you can handicap yourself severely.
Yeah,
So,
you can have a psychotic break.
yeah, because you're just not to that level where you need to be seeing that stuff yet. And so it's about doing the work. The whole point of what you're here for is to do the work. And that means the material work. That means keeping at your diet. That means exercising and training your body, your mind, and your spirit. And also in the spiritual side of things as well. And whatever that means for people, it's different for everyone. But there's no shortcut. And if ever you choose the shortcut, there's a Harry Potter quote that I love very much. And it is, there's going to come a time very soon, and I think we live in that time now, where you're going to have to make a choice. You're going to have to make the right choice or the easy choice.
Yes. Boy, you nailed it. Yes, mhm. And that's why I made the post that I did. And I commented under your last video with the dialogue from, it was basically a message that I'd been getting from the beings that I channel. And it was coming in slightly different words over days. And that's why I ended up reaching out to you, because I had this symbol that was kind of forming in my head about all, these messages that I was getting about, and what I was getting is that we are at a choice point, and the equinox was the beginning of that choice point of, you see what's going on in the world. We're at a point where you either choose the path of division or the path of unity.
Right.
And the path of division is the easy path, because it's like none of it's my fault. It's all everybody else's fault. And there's nothing I can do about it. But I'm going to point my finger, though. I can do that. And then the other side is the doing your inner work, as you said, and getting to the point where you are elevated above the duality and above the attaching to an identity, and getting to the point where you've dropped enough density, where you've dropped enough karma, because you've done your inner work and you've healed those wounds to the degree where you might still get triggered, but you no longer operate from them and you no longer respond from them, where you can see the inner divine light in everyone else. We are at that choice point. And I don't think it's like a one day thing. I think it's a period of time. And I'm sure there's an astrological aspect to that. Maybe it's a Saturn thing. That one I actually don't know. Mars, maybe. I don't know. I'm going to shut up now, because I don't know enough to say specifically, but we are at that choice point. And so people really need to take a long, hard look at the kind of world that they want to live in, and realize that they are only responsible for how they choose to respond. So instead of pissing and moaning about it being the other person's fault, that only promotes the very thing that you say you don't want. So do your own inner work, be the unity, be the change, be the love, be the compassion. Stop pointing the finger and, well, they're not doing it.
Right.
You have no control over that.
Right. Exactly. If you have no control over it, if I don't have any control over something, I don't put a lot of energy into it, because there's no point in that. And as far as astrology goes, who knows? I'm not an expert astrologer. I delve into it because I have to, for alchemy and a few other things. But there's a thing called the Thema Mundi, The thema mundi is, they say it's for training purposes only, but if you look at the 12 zodiac, all the planets line up from 1 to 7, and that will actually happen in August of the year 6050, and it only happens once within a window of, I want to say, 30,000 years. So when
Wow.
they do it, so in 6050, that's actually going to happen. So that might be an astrological event that has to do with the human race. And we go 3050, or whenever, did I say 3050, or whenever it is, it's actually like 5, maybe it
60
was 5,
maybe?
maybe it's 5 or 600 years. I'd have to go research it, but
Yeah.
that's an eye blink. Like if you think
Yeah.
about, Christ died 2000 years ago, so 5 or
Right.
600 years, that's an eye blink.
Yes.
And you see how we're accelerating to where we're going. So, and
Yeah.
that's just a random tidbit of information. Go look up the thema mundi and you can see for yourself. But
Very cool. Very cool. And I think we were also just recent I actually just sort of learned this. I, like you, I am a student of astrology. I am not an astrologer, so I'm no expert, but it fascinates the ever loving bejesus out of me. But we were just aligned with the galactic center,
hmm,
and there's like a super galactic center, which I
hmm,
did not know that was a thing. And they would be also known as the Great Central Sun, and or sorry, the Central Sun and the Great Central Sun. And the galactic center is like this even bigger black hole where like all these galaxies combine, but they're like points of creation and destruction, sort of like
hmm,
the eclipse, where it's like you're at a point now where you make a decision of what you'd like to see destroyed in your life and then what you'd like to create. So but you choose based on what you focus on. It you choose based on what your emotional state is. You choose based on the degree to which you are still operating from your wounds. If
right.
you're still very, blinded by your wounding and not able to see when and how your wounds control you, you will easily buy into those things. But if you are doing your inner work and asking those questions of, why do I do this, why do I think this way, why do I feel this way, why does that trigger me, why, and you start doing that inner work, you will start to then shift your perspective and operate from a much more elevated perspective. You're dropping that density like crazy,
Mhm,
and your emotions will elevate because you'll feel a greater peace within yourself because you're no longer struggling with your inner demons.
mhm,
You've got you're like Archangel Michael, and your ego is not destroyed, but it's under your control. It does
mhm,
not control you. And I think that's where gaining that inner peace and will allow you to then choose that timeline of, peace, love, compassion, unity. You know what I mean?
mhm. Definitely. And also remember that everything is a fractal, and a fractal is a mathematical structure. Uh, as above, so below, right? So the macrocosm is the galaxies and whatnot above us. And then internally, we have our own galaxies that live within us, and we live in the microcosm. And the whole point of that is, if you can learn how to understand that the things that happen here also are reflective above you in the heavens, and the things that are happening in the heavens are reflective above them in that super sun or whatever you called it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if you can learn to harness the vibrations from the worlds above us, in the Kabbalah, we have the four worlds, and we live in the lowest of the worlds. That's how you make change happen. You learn how to harness the macrocosm like that.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, just to tie things up because we've gone almost an hour. This has been so much fun, and I'm already thinking of, ooh, we should come on here and talk about this, then we should come on here and talk about that. But I do think, oh God, that you just got to, damn. Okay, it's been an hour. Don't go there. We'll talk about other things other times. Um, I just want to stress to the viewers the importance of where we are right now in terms of human evolution as a collective consciousness. If any of you have ever listened to the telepathy tapes, we know that the gifts that, nope, I'm not going to say that way. The abilities that those people have that are highlighted in the telepathy tapes, those are abilities that we already have like we can do all of those things. We are becoming a new, more evolved version of us,
Mhm,
provided that's the timeline that you choose. Otherwise, you're going to choose the involuted aspect. But you choose based on what you focus on, you choose based on your thoughts, your feelings, your intentions. So choose wisely. Do you
Yeah.
want to be in unity consciousness, or do you want to continue to be a part of the problem and point your finger at the other side and continue to attach to the to a polarity and continue to stay indoctrinated and propagandized?
Pretty much.
No final words of wisdom.
And you stole all the thunder. That's pretty
Damn
much
it! I'm sorry.
that's pretty much it. I would say it a little bit differently, but
Okay, say it differently. Say it
it
differently.
it's more for me. It's everything you said. Only I'm trying to reword a little bit. Yes, it's putting in the work, and we're remembering we the things that you learn in different orders. It's a lot of times you'll get the response, that's it, like I already knew that. I'm like, yeah, exactly, you did, you already knew those things. You're remembering things that you've forgotten, that we have forgotten. and
Mhm.
and you can remember them, but that takes some work. It's not just going to be handed to you. Or you can continue through this oblivion, take the blue pill, as they say in the Matrix,
Yeah.
and continue to live, trying to stay comfortable. But comfort never got you anywhere. If we're comfortable, we sit and we do nothing, and that's entropy, and then entropy leads to destruction. So it is through
Mhm.
challenge, it is through the crucible, it is through hard times, and it is through hard work that we progress and evolve and become better.
Oh my God, that was perfect. Yep, a utopia is not all it's cracked up to be. There is no evolution in a utopia. Yeah, awesome. All right, well, God, this was so much fun. We need to. We're gonna do this again.
Let me know.
Okay.
You know where to find me.
Yes, I do, and I'm glad I reached out to you today. This was great, and I hope everyone watching enjoyed this conversation and got something out of it. And go ahead, go and follow the Desert Viking on YouTube. And if you like this, if you like what we've done here, don't forget, and I hate doing this, but like, share, and subscribe, because algorithmically speaking, when you do those things, you tell YouTube, hey, this is valuable content that I think other people would find valuable. So please do that. And thanks again to Chris for coming on and chit-chatting with me. And this was just so much fun.
Yeah, it's been fun. I appreciate your time. I love what you do, and thank you for what you do for everyone as well. So
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Bye.